Hello everybody, Dave Neal here, continuing to cover this Colton Underwood story written in Variety by Elizabeth Wagmeister. I made a video a couple hours ago reading the story in Variety, titled Colton Underwood, the first gay bachelor, confronts his controversial coming out. And of course, in this article, some real breaking news, things we haven't heard before. Colton signing up for Grindr back in 2016. So sort of knowing he's gay, but going on The Bachelorette to have his last stand to fight to be straight. His dad catching him watching gay porn at 10. Being blackmailed after going to a gay massage parlor and then using that blackmail as a reason to come out. Question being that we have is, why should we believe Colton Underwood? At this point, as we know, he's fabricated info before. So I tweeted to the author, Elizabeth Wagmeister, right here. I said, great article on Colton Underwood. How closely did Variety vet the blackmail emails? How are we supposed to know he didn't fabricate, as he has faked correspondence in the past as part of his manipulating Cassie Randolph? Appreciate your article. So I haven't heard back yet, but we'll have to see. I mean, it's important to vet articles. It's important to know that something is true. Was he really blackmailed? I think that's an important fact to know here. And a lot of people have commented from my last video saying, look, there's no way we can trust this guy. He's lied to us in the past. He's just looking out for him. Well, what I didn't cover in the last video is that there's a 12-minute clip from Elizabeth interviewing Colton Underwood. I think it's much better to see his interview versus read it, as we can get the full sort of vibe of his demeanor during this interview. So I'll play this 12-minute clip. He talks about Cassie Randolph in it, and because some very interesting stuff. And I have to give credit to Elizabeth. She didn't hold back in the way she posed the questions to him about his stalking and harassing. Let's just play this, and then we'll discuss afterwards. And of course, I should say I'm making a video tomorrow with your voicemails. I love to hear from the community. So call in 401-213-9828, 401-213-9828. Leave a voicemail under a minute, please, and I will be playing those on tomorrow's episode. All right, let's get right into it.
Colton, you had a very public experience coming out. You did a television interview that opened the floodgates for people to start talking. I'm curious, what have you learned throughout this whole experience since you've come out?
A lot. I have learned a lot. And I think like there is, weird or corny as it sounds, like there was a lot of learning experiences for me from hearing some of the harsh criticism and hearing some of the feedback that I was getting. And it helped me, and just helped me grow as a human being.
Do you regret coming out in such a public forum?
No, I don't. I mean, if I look back at that interview, of course I can nitpick certain things that I said, and I think one that stands out to me, like when I watched it back, was I just wanted to make it clear that I didn't intend to use any of the ladies or Cassie as like a stepping stone to my happiness and my freedom. That was never my intention.
You brought up Cassie, and she filed a restraining order against you in 2020, which she later dropped. But when she did file, there were claims that you had put a tracking device on her car and that you had sent harassing texts, that you were outside of her parents' home. With you coming out now in such a public forum, there has been a lot that has come back up, and your treatment of women has come into question. What would you like to say about that situation now?
I would say that I've ran for myself for 29 years, and there is no excuse for any behavior of mine that was holding on to this straight identity or that was operating out of fear of being gay and being outed. I think just coming to terms with who I was hard enough, and then now realizing my actions and sort of what I did to Cassie and my friends and her family and what I put them through was so wrong. And I'm so sorry, and I think selfishly, I'm very upset with myself that I might not ever have closure, and I might not ever be able to apologize in a satisfactory manner for not only her, but for everybody. And I think that's what hurts, is I don't think I'm ever going to be able to really, address things the way that I should or could.
After you did your television interview, did you reach out to Cassie? Have you tried to talk to her?
I have not. Her and I sort of have just this agreement not to go into details of our breakup and not get into it all.
Made a book about
I think it was hard for me to watch her name get brought back up in all of this, and for that I'm very, very sorry, because that shouldn't be the case. And I know people have a lot of questions, but people also need to realize we have an agreement together to not talk about it. That's the part in all of this that is challenging and hard.
You paid her
I
to be
would
silent.
want nothing more than to say I am sorry and take ownership and accountability for my actions and what I did.
Did you ever come out to Cassie, whether it was during your time together romantically or as friends or leading up to your interview?
I didn't. I never had the courage to talk to her while we were in a relationship, and especially after. I didn't have the courage to come out to myself, and until this last year.
But you were on Grindr 4 years ago.
I think it's really important
5 years
to
ago.
point out that you should not be using your sexuality or your coming out to negate the severity of the allegations. And I think that
Good for her.
criticism was worthy.
100%. And I think that was never my intentions. And after coming out, people, went back to my past and what I went through in there. And that has so many layers to it and so much more to it than people will ever know. And just going into details of that isn't appropriate for us and sort of the arrangement we have. And I never want people to think that I'm coming out to change the narrative or to brush over and not take responsibility for my actions. And now that I have this gay life, that I don't have to address my past as a straight man. And for that, I would say that was never my intentions, if that's how it came off in the interview. And
So I understand that you can't talk about it and you want to respect her in that way.
Yeah.
But I do want to ask you,
Push
and
back.
you referred to this during your television interview. You said that you messed up and that you regret the way that
Loving
relationship
her right
ended.
now.
Why did you act the way that you were alleged to have acted?
I think I knew in my heart of hearts that Cassie was like my last straight relationship. And she was somebody who I loved and fell in love with, and someone that I thought could make me straight. Not being able to look myself in the mirror and confront my demons and be okay with who I was as a person was the biggest regret that I've had in all of this. Hurting people in my life, not only Cassie, but hurting my friendships, controlling situations to try to grasp at any part of this straight fantasy that I was trying to live out was so wrong. And I don't know if I'll ever get closure, be able to forgive myself for some of the things that I said and did. And I just vow and promise to move forward in a positive direction and never repeat those. And that's all I can do.
When the words restraining order, stalking, abuse, when they're put out there, I think there's a lot of questions that come up. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you, were you ever physically abusive in any way?
No, never. And those words are hard to hear. And I think that the thing that gets me every time is the abuse and all that. That's not.
I want to pause this and just say this is very important, because she asked whether he was physically abusive, whereas in the article, the written version, it kind of makes it sound like he was saying, I wasn't physically abusive, therefore I wasn't abusive. And it's important to watch this and realize not to say she was trying to manipulate the conversation whatsoever. I think she's doing a really good job here. But that while he's saying I was never physically abusive, I don't think that was ever really the allegation at all. I don't think anyone was wondering if he was physically abusive. Good to know that he wasn't.
I am as a person. While I own I made a lot of mistakes, I just, it's hard saying those words. It is.
If Cassie reached out to you and had questions, would you be willing to sit down with her and answer anything that she is curious about?
Of course. I think that for me, I would love nothing more to have closure and love nothing more to answer questions for her if she had any. Yeah, I mean, that's the least I can do.
When you went on The Bachelor, obviously that was a show where you were going in to date a large group of women. I think a lot of people are wondering, was that all a lie when you went in? Were you going in with the genuine hopes of meeting a woman that you would marry? And did you think that you would be married to a woman for the rest of your life? My
feelings were they were real and they were genuine going into it because I was just running from my truth and who I was for my entire life. And it only made it more confusing and harder on myself by falling in love with Cassie. I think that was the part that confused me the most, you know?
Do you regret going on The Bachelor?
I mean, I regret how I handled myself, and I regret bringing other people into my lies and my deception and how I went about that.
One of the reasons why you went on The Bachelor, I would imagine, was to fall in love. Yep. Now you are living in your truth. Do you still want to fall in love? Do you want to be married? Do you want to have kids?
More than anything. The whole point of coming out, too, is so I can actually have a real emotional connection with a man and not have to hide it, not have to be in the closet. I want a partner and a husband more than anything, and I want a family. I want kids. I want dogs. I want the whole 9 yards. And I never knew that was possible until I came out and I got to do research and meet people and ask questions and actually lean into my truth.
You also, in your television interview, said that you tried to take your own life because you were harboring that secret. I'm so sorry that you went through that. Yep. But now that you have come forward, you've come out, you have a platform, you want kids, what would be your message to the LGBTQ community, to the youth that are feeling suicidal?
I would tell them that they're not alone. I would tell them that it gets better and to keep having the courage and the strength every day to wake up and to try your best to live your truth in whatever capacity and whatever that means. And don't be afraid to ask for help, because I was. And I met with a therapist and a psychiatrist, and we spoke about everything. And it was the first time in my life that I ever truly unpacked everything that went on.
Did you know anyone who was gay, or did you have any role models that you could look to and that you could see yourself represented?
We had one gay guy in my entire town, and at the time he was
openly gay.
Sort of the butt of every joke, especially in the locker room and especially on the football field. And it was never a good thing. It was never a cool thing. I would have done anything to have a gay professional football player in the NFL so that I could have looked and been like, I want to be like him. And I just didn't have that. We didn't have that. We still don't really as a society.
Is that part of the reason why you wanted to come out in a public forum and do this show, so that kids growing up can have someone to look to in the media?
I think that's definitely a factor in
question right
my
there.
Decision to actually do the show. I know that I have a lot to learn. And honestly, when I came into this, I was like, I didn't want to be a role model, but I don't have a choice. Because while people are coming out saying, we don't need another white man coming out, we've heard this story before, I'm here to tell you, I grew up in Central Illinois, and as an athlete, as a football player specifically, I didn't have representation. And I know that there's far more representation than just who I am physically, but also in the industry and in the community. And there's so many different levels that we can do better and help support one another. And that's what I want to do.
There it is, folks. That's the main clip. We'll see if they release any other info. Hit the subscribe button to get more info if it comes along. You know, this Elizabeth here, what a knockout job she did. She really did a great job here. She really did a good job asking some good follow-up questions. And she said to Colton to his face that this is worthy of criticism. I'm not going to knock Robin Roberts for her interview on Good Morning America as the initial interview. As we knew after the initial coming out ceremony that it kind of is, that there would be more prosecuting of what actually went down from the journalistic side of things. Elizabeth Wagmeister did just that. Senior correspondent at Variety, hashtag 30 under 30, Forbes. Yeah. I mean, here's the deal when it comes to journalism. We're moving to a world like a Yelp-based journalism world where, like, I value individuals more than I do. Like, who would have known we would get this story from Variety? You know what I mean? But you got to value someone who can ask questions with good follow-ups. And she asked if he ever came out to Cassie. She asked if he ever was it physically abusive and what was going through his mind. And he said, she basically says, what was going through your mind with the tracking device and the stalking and text messages you were sending and showing up at her alley at 3 a.m. And he kind of responded to that, not addressing, yes, I did those things, but he for sure hasn't denied it, and he's had plenty of opportunity to deny it. He said, I've ran for myself for 29 years. No excuse for any behavior that held onto straight identity. He was operating out of fear. Realizing my actions, what I did to Cassie and her family was so wrong. I'm so sorry. So he essentially does apologize for those, for the specifics of what he did. And I'm not one who personally, first of all, I'm not the person that he needs to be apologizing to. Therefore, it doesn't matter if I were to accept his apology or not. I think he did a really good job in this interview, but also we know he's very media trained. He's obviously got crisis PR, and he's got a very specific set of talking points he wanted to get across. So we still don't know. I mean, the story just gets wilder and wilder. We don't know if the blackmailing actually happened. As some commenters have said, he very well could have been in a sort of bath spa type environment where he was nude and photos were taken, while there may have been like sex acts taking place in a different part of the bathhouse or whatever it may have been. Really not sure too much about that. I'm also questioning the timeline of that. Did that happen while he was with Cassie? Because he said, he fell in love with Cassie, and Cassie was the one who was kind of like, his last plea for heterosexual life. That's why after the relationship was over, he held and clung so tightly to it. None of these aren't excuses for what he did, but we're looking into it. We're talking about months after he had coronavirus. No one brings that part up. We're talking about the codependency, the toxic love addiction. Everything we've covered in the past can apply to him, even though he has come out as gay. This could have still been him trying to hold on to that control. Living in Los Angeles, being away from his family, being isolated during the pandemic. These aren't excuses, but these are factors that go into unfortunate and really sad things that happened. And of course, the collateral damage being Cassie Randolph, her family, his friends, all that trust that was lost. So yeah, I give Elizabeth a real solid A+ journalism right there. I mean, really, I thought she asked some really tough questions. I thought she did a really good job. I think a lot of what we watched in this video wasn't covered in the print version of what we read earlier today, which makes you wonder, did editors take it out? I'm really not sure. This is why I ask for long-form interviews. This is why podcasting's so popular, because you see a clickbait this, you see a clickbait that, things out of context. I want to hear her questions, I want to see his response, and then her follow-up, and I want to watch it like a tennis match. Not because I'm looking to rubberneck some crazy, sad, unfortunate accident, but because we want the truth. We want to understand where he was coming from. While he wants to have a platform for boys and girls and closeted gays to come out of the closet, he also is a platform for domestic violence, for abuse, for stalking. And he needs to use that platform to help others. And maybe he will someday. Doesn't look like it's going to happen right now. But he needs to use that platform to help others when they realize they're stuck in a toxic situation of their own creating, their own ruminating, things like that. It's not always because you're gay. That was his catalyst. He was gay and he wanted to hold on to his heterosexuality. But it might be because you think you need a relationship more than you need your life. How many people have tried to hold on to a relationship or threatened to harm themselves to keep a relationship going? So much codependency and despair that's out there. And he has such a platform and a forum to talk about that. Maybe one day he'll open up even more. What I encourage him and what I think we'll watch is the more he shares, the more he unburdens, the more he gets off of his chest. I think he's going to feel good about it. I think he's going to want to keep on doing that. And I think the more he gets off his chest, the more we're going to understand what went down, the more we're going to use it as a case study to help others. That's what happens, folks. You got to analyze these things. You got to do an autopsy on these relationships. If it's going to be in the public light, do an autopsy on it. Figure out what went wrong. And maybe, just maybe, he can help. I know this wasn't his plan all along. He can help guys, men, or women get out of toxic situations, understand when they're ruminating and becoming obsessive, and understanding healthy ways to overcome that. Unfortunately, it was too little too late for him. But in the grand scheme of things, I think there will be a net positive from all of this. I think there is a lot to be learned and a lot he's learning and going through. Here's to therapy. That's all I got to say about that. Therapy, talking about things, shining light on dark situations. You know, sunlight is the greatest disinfectant, all those great sayings. So anyway, give Elizabeth a follow on her Twitter and tell her she did a good job, because I think she really did. I think she really did step it up and had a knockout interview here. So anyway, folks, leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Voicemail 401-213-9828. You can call it. And we'll be going live tomorrow, Thursday at 4 p.m. in a voicemail video. So stay tuned, hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you later. Bye now.